Good morning or good afternoon, depending on which time zone you're in. Welcome, everybody. We're just going to give another minute or two to let a few others join, and then we'll get going. We can get going. We'd like to welcome everybody to this session for our Lunch and Learn series discussing Unanet. And we're happy to see everybody. We were able to meet many of you for the first time or for just getting reacquainted at the Champions Conference a week or so ago. So we learned a lot. Hopefully you did as well. And hopefully that'll make these sessions even more opportunistic as we go through the various topics. So again, welcome, and we're looking forward to discussing our topic today and also answering any questions that you have. Just by way of a little prelude, really our goal for these Lunch and Learns is to just impart some of our knowledge and experience to those who are in the Unanet community using Unanet like we do. We do this on a daily basis. We train users and help people customize their systems and support them with the Unanet use. And we invite all questions and needs. If you can just let us know, and we can help the best that we can. Also, at the end of the presentation, we'll have some time for some question and answers. So hopefully you brought some questions with you today, and we can hopefully give you some good answers. And finally, if you have any suggestions or feedback on these sessions that we put together every 2 weeks, please email me. I'll have my email address at the end, and we can be sure to get them on the schedule so that we can address everybody's questions and needs as we go through. Just by way of some of the things that we offer, as many of you know, but we also have some new ones as well joining us. We do outsourced accounting services. So if you need help with in between hires or something like that for accounting, we can help with that. We do process analysis and operational support for your system. We can offer training and optimization and customization for your Unanet system as well. Custom designs and kind of customizing invoices and reports as well for you. And anything else that you may need using your Unanet system on a day-to-day basis. So if any of those needs jump out to you, please reach out to us, and we can schedule one-on-one support as well. Well, with that said, we would like to give our attention to Martha Griffith. She's one of our senior ERP consultants and also a partner. And she's going to discuss with us today on the theme expense codes and expense groups. So we look forward to that presentation, and we'll turn it over to Martha.
Thank you, Tim. I will share my screen here to start. And you should all now see our sample Casco and Wilson database, and I already have expense codes pulled up here. And everybody in Unanet is probably, if you're in Unanet now, you're live, which most of you are using expense codes and expense groups. But there's always room for making those, to understanding them a little bit better and making them more useful to you, or cleaning them up too. So hopefully you'll be able to take away some ways to be able to clean up what you have there, or make the groups maybe a little bit better, working better for you. So expense codes, both expense codes and expense groups are under accounts payable. Project administration expense codes, and then expense groups are here. Expense codes is the default list of categories, and I'll explain a little bit more what they do, but it's a overall default list of categories, and expense groups are groupings of those categories that then get assigned to projects. So back to expense codes. Expense codes are used for a few different reasons. One is so that users can choose a category on their expense sheets without having to know anything about the general ledger accounts. This is a listing Anything that's checked here is show an expense sheet. These categories are available to the users to choose from on their expense sheets. Another reason is to allow for non-labor expenses to be grouped into categories for billing purposes. So we can, on invoice templates, on invoice designs, have these groupings show up when you tag some type of expense, whether it be on the accounts payable or the expense sheet side to a category. We can have these names, these groupings show up on those invoice designs for your client invoices. And then the third reason is that it allows a mechanism for doing unit billing. Some firms out there, some of you don't have any type of unit billing, but some of you do. Some examples here in our sample database are like if you have a survey group and you need to bill out a 2-man crew for a day at a certain rate, that's what unit billing is. And we won't go into unit billing in detail today. That could be something that we might touch on in the future, though. That might be another good category for us to do a lunch and learn on. So those are the reasons for expense codes. Now, expense groups, as I mentioned, they're just a way to organize these expense codes into groupings. And I'll show you how to create a group over here, but you can have an expense group that only has certain expense codes in it. And then these expense groups are tagged to the project. When you set up a new project, most of you know that under project administration projects is where you set up a project. Those expense groups are tagged to a project on this expense and GL tab. We have 3 expense groups in this demo database. So these are the 3 that are in here. I'm going to be showing you this $1 million project on a couple of different transactions. And right now it is tagged to the test expense group. So if I jump back to expense groups and we look at the test one, that means that all of these expense codes are available when we use that project. So let's talk in detail a little bit more about the expense codes. When you set up new expense codes, you're going to want to set them up with everything that's here is a default for each expense code, every column that's here. But these columns can be changed in the expense group. So you want to set up your default to be however that expense code is used most of the time or majority of the time. Or if it's equal, that you might bill it out different ways for different types of projects. Just pick one way to put it here in the default expense code. So what that means is if we look at this first expense code that's already in here, this is called lodging. Let's go across the top here and we'll talk about the different columns that show up. If something is a unit billing, when you set up an expense code, and there will always be an extra line at the bottom of expense codes to set up new ones. This new line is down here, but let's look at one that's already here. So when you set one up, a unit, if it's unit billing, like the example I gave of the 2-man crew, then this box gets checked. Note, if any of you are looking in your database and you don't see this is unit in the unit column, it's because you don't have units turned on in global settings. Show an expense sheet means that when somebody pulls up their expense sheet, this lodging category is available there. If you have, sometimes when you have unit billing or you have something else, maybe consultants that come through accounts payable, but would never show up on a person's expense sheet, you may not want to check that box there. Active just means that it can be used if over time you have expense codes that you've used, but you don't need to use them in the future, you can inactivate them. You wouldn't want to delete them for historical purposes, but you can inactivate them so they don't show up anymore. Like everything in Unanet, you have to give each expense code a code. So you can, those are alphanumeric. You can put numbers in there like we do have in this demo database. A lot of times when I'm setting up a new database, I'll make the code the same as the name. You literally could name this, code this lodging, expense code lodging, the same. But that is just something to talk through when you're setting up your database of what will work best for you. if you use multi-currency, which probably most of you don't, you can change currency here. Each expense code can be tagged to a different project management type. So lodging is normally just an ODC, as we refer to them in Unanet, an other direct charge. Or in other words, a reimbursable expense or a non-reimbursable expense. That's what other direct charges are non-consultant expenses. You can also give them, you can say they're a consultant, and then you can use either what this does is tells the system what GL codes can be used. All of your chart of accounts on all of your direct chart of accounts have a PM type set up for them to help controls in Unanet so that you can only use certain types of expenses for projects, for billable projects like these are. So if we put this as other direct charges, when we get into a transaction, you're only going to be able to use direct GL accounts, PM type GL accounts there. If you use consultant, then it tells it you can either use an ICC or OCC. Those are in-contract consultants or out-of-contract consultants. Or if you really want to put control on this, you can say this is only an in-contract consultant or only an out-of-contract consultant. Let me leave this as an ODC because that's what normally what lodging is. Expense markup type. This is telling the system when you use this expense code in a transaction, whether on the expense sheet or in your purchase journals on the accounts payable side, how are you billing your client for this? If many firms for like lodging, printing, meals, mileage, you have built into your contracts that you can mark up these type of expenses by maybe 10% or 5%. Those type of markups, you would have this expense markup type set as markup, and you would put the markup over here as if it's 10%, it would say 1.1. If you can mark those up 5%, this would say 1.05. If you can bill your client the exact amount of the expense, but you can't mark it up at all, you'd put that as 1.0. And if you can't bill it at all, we have, if it's non-reimbursable expenses, there are a couple of ways to do it, but you can, you could have the markup here as 0. The other markup types that are here are flat amount and add-on. Flat amount means that if I put in a lodging expense on my expense sheet to a specific project for $300, but for some reason in our contract, we have like a per diem rate that we can only bill $100 a night, then this flat amount says you put flat amount here, and in the markup, this is really not labeled very well. It is related to this. So it's only a true markup when you use markup here, but flat amount, you'd put $100 here for the example that I gave. If we can only bill the client $100, anytime we put a lodging fee in, not just $300, but if I put on my expense sheet $200, or I put on my expense sheet $500 for a lodging expense, if I put $100 here as flat amount, we'll always be billing the client $100. So it's completely unrelated to the amount of the actual expense. The third option, the add-on, that means whatever you put over here is a dollar amount that adds on to the expense, the actual expense, the actual cost of the expense that you put in the system. So if we had lodging of $300, I put on my expense sheet, and for some reason we can add $50 to every lodging fee in a contract. I've never seen that before, but that's what this would do. If I had add-on and $50, it's going to literally add $50 onto whatever the cost is. Most often we're using markup here, but there are reasons to use a flat amount and add-on depending on how your contracts are set up. The unit rate, if you do have units set up, this would be, this plays into these things. And again, we'd have to go into that in more detail in a unit billing training session as well. But that unit rate would be, it plays into what the general ledger transaction will be when something gets posted with these expense codes on them. Bill status means everything's set automatically to ready to bill here. All of you that do billing, you know when something is in ready to bill status, that means it flows through into PA bill review, PM bill review, and will show up on the invoices. There are reasons you could use, so for those type of expenses that you cannot bill through to your client, so I noted that you could have your markup here as 0, and that's fine, and have it as ready to bill. Then the expense line will still show up in PA bill review, but it will show up as $0. You could, though, there could be reasons that you instead change that bill status to a never bill. And if you change it to a never bill, then it does not show up in PA bill review and PM bill review. So you could set this to never bill. You could still have a markup showing here as 1.1, but if it's never bill, then it's not going to show up in your billing side. I know that can get a little confusing about how to set this up and why you might want to set it up one way and not the other, but that would be something to discuss in more detail with myself or one of our consultants to figure out the best way to do that with you. So let me leave this one as a 1.1. And when we scroll over here to the right a little bit more, the next 2 columns are usually filled in as well. So lodging, if somebody puts on their expense sheet, they put this lodging category on there. It's going to, when it gets posted, it's going to go to this GL account if a billable project is used. And when I say billable project, let me jump back to the projects and make sure when this charge type is set to billable, it's going to pull whatever's in this direct cost column. If a project, though, is set to either opportunity or indirect, either one of those two, opportunity or indirect, then it's going to pull the GL account from this overhead column. Lodging makes sense. You might in your firm have people putting in an expense report for lodging that might be billable, might be put to a billable project, but they might also have to stay overnight for some type of a conference. So that could also be overhead. So it makes sense that lodging would have both of those things. There are some things, though, that may only be on the project, so on the billable project side. So if like consultants, we have a consultant and a non-billable consultant down here, you may not have an overhead. It's okay not to fill these in, although we recommend that you do fill something into the direct and overhead, because if somebody uses one of these expense codes and they put in an indirect project or a billable project and there's nothing in the fields, it's actually then it's going to put that amount to the error account. And anybody who's looked at their general ledger and seen that error account, they know that that's something that you always want to dig into. You never want to have anything in there, but this could be a reason. If these are blank, it could be a reason that there's stuff in the error account. We don't always fill stuff into the direct bill revenue. This would be if for some reason when you bill your client for the lodging, you want that lodging fee to go to a different account than what your default billing account is for ODCs, you can fill that in here. Most of the time I see that blank, but again, if for some reason you have lodging revenue that you want to show up on your income statement, you can put those accounts, those would go here. And again, I've never seen anybody use the markup build. Obviously somebody does out there, we have it in here, but this would be if you have a lodging expense that you're billing your client for $500 and you're marking it up, so the lodging expense itself is $500, but you're marking it up 10%, then you'd be billing the client $550, right? If I have my math right. And so if you had this filled in and this filled in to a different account, then the $500 would go to $4,200 and the $50 could go to another GL account. That gets very detailed. Again, most firms don't use this here. If you're using revenue recognition, you can have an unbilled revenue account. Most of you are not doing that, so I'm not going to go into that in detail. This comment template and this internal comment template, they're working off of the same thing. Many of you probably do not have any comment templates in the system, but it's referring to this utility or this function here under utilities and comment templates. You can put in templates for what the comments show when somebody's putting in their expense sheet. Here's an expense sheet. There are notes internal here, and then there are PM comments over here. You can have this automatically fill in. If somebody chooses lodging here on their expense sheet, this expense code, you can have the notes fill in with certain wording automatically. And these internal notes are what this internal comment template is. And this one is for the PM comments. If you want the comment to be required, it's only going to be related to the PM comment. But again, when somebody's in their expense sheet, if you want to make them put in this PM comment at the expense code level, you can check this box. And that means anytime anybody uses the lodging expense code, they have to put in a comment or they're going to get an error. And then when we go over a little bit more, and then here's the internal comment required. So this comment required is the PM comment. This is the internal comment, whether it's required or not. If you check something as non-reimbursable here, that means that on the expense sheet, this amount does not get filled in. It means it's some kind of an expense code that you want people to put on their expense sheet, but they're not getting reimbursed for it. And there could be reasons that you want to do that. Maybe this has been in there for a long time. It was before we had unit billing, so it kind of took the place of unit billing beforehand. But just know that if you, in general, you're not wanting to check that box. But if you do check it, then the amount will not show up to pay the employee a reimbursement. Okay, there are a lot of things in here. So let me just review what is mostly set up most of the time. When you set up a new expense code, most of the time you're looking at the show an expense sheet, making sure it's active, giving it a code name. The currency is always set to American dollars. So unless you're multi-currency, you shouldn't have to change that. And then the expense code type, make sure that's correct. The markup type, the markup. Unit rates only if you're using units. Make sure the bill status is what you want it to be, and fill in the direct and overhead. The other fields are there if you need them, but we don't always see those filled in. So going back to what I said in the beginning, this expense code list under project administration expense codes, this is the default list of all expense codes available in the system. You then go to expense groups under project administration though, and set up groupings of these. And these groupings are what get tagged to the actual project. So when somebody chooses a project, when I choose $1 million project on my expense sheet, for example, I have this expense sheet, a $1 million project. This listing of expense codes is not coming from the default list. See, everything's not here for a couple of reasons. It's going to pull only the things that are in this expense group and only the lines that have these checkboxes checked in the default expense codes, this show an expense sheet. When you create an expense group, if you have a project where nobody should be ever charging lodging to the project or printing, you can create a new expense group. And when you create a new expense group, I'm going to call this test for training. You first give it a start date. Make sure this start date is before the first date that you're going to be putting expenses in. Because if this trips people up sometimes, they'll make a new expense group and it will default to today's date. But they actually have somebody who needs to put some expenses on an expense sheet for last week. Make sure that this goes back to last week if that's true. Or else the expense codes will not show up when they try to do that. If all of the expense codes when you're creating a new group should be there, you can click check all and everything will show up. But in the example I was just giving where you have a project where there should be no lodging or printing, but you do have meals, mileage and airfare, parking, maybe it's just those 4. You can then just check those, click create. And then this expense group only has these 4 on it. If I went back to my $1 million project and I changed this to be test for training. If I save this, I just want to show you when I go to my expense sheet, which I didn't, most of you know this, but expense sheets are under personal and then expense sheets. This is where a person goes to put in expenses that they've paid for out of pocket and need to get reimbursed by the company. So if I come in here now, if I click this drop-down menu, notice there are only 4 options here. So this is a good way to control what people are charging to your projects. This is also true in purchase journals. So you're going to use expense codes in expense sheets and also in purchase journals and disbursement journals. So purchase journals are invoices from your vendors. That's under accounts payable and purchase journals. And when you're in there, I've started creating this purchase journal here just by clicking new, and I have some information in here. This is a $5,000 invoice from Southern MEP. And I did put the $1 million project here. And if I go into the expense code, note again, we only see those 4 that I have in the expense group that is tagged to this specific project. If I go in though, and I choose a different project, let me see if I just grab another one. This one here, this project has a different expense group. So I'll show you when I click on expense codes, that expense group that this other project is tagged to has a lot more expense code options. So even in one transaction, this purchase journal could be an invoice from Southern MEP where Southern MEP did work on this $1 million bridge and this old port nautical supply project. So just to show you could put them both on here and they can be pulling from different expense groups. I know this doesn't necessarily make sense. Probably this Southern MEP is not charging airfare or who knows, but I'm going to put those in there just to show you what it does. So hopefully that demonstrates what these groups do. The first step in what they do. Now, the other thing is when you create a new expense group, it does pull in with the markups that you have in the expense codes themselves. So it'll pull in with whatever's here. If though on this project, that $1 million bridge project, for some reason, we could mark up meals and mileage 50%. I can put 1.5 here just for this group. And this test group still, and let me save that. It didn't like something that I did. And let's just, whoops, let me go back down here. Let me say no. So let me just change this 1 to here and save this. There we go. And then let me change this one to 1.5. Let me do 1 at a time, so I'm not overwhelming the system. So test for training, that's what I'm using on that project, but the test expense group still has this at 1.1 for meals and 1.0 for mileage. So just to show you, to explain this. So if I use the test expense group in this project, if I use that here, and I put my meals into a transaction for this project, and it's using test, it's going to mark up the expense 1.1 at 10%. If though I have this project tagged to the test for training expense group here, then if I go back here, the test for training, if I put in meals there, after I've changed that expense group, then it's going to mark up those expenses on the client invoice 50%. So, and you can change these. You don't have to use, like, you could have meals for some projects getting marked up from the actual meal cost. You might have other projects where you have a per diem that you're charging the client for meals. So some expense groups may have a flat amount in here for meals. So when you use these expense groups, and these expense groups, note, when I put the date in there, it's showing you, if you remember when I clicked on new, yeah, let me save that. When I clicked on new, it asked the date that you want to start. It will show you it will always show you what you put in there for a date here. If you need to change markup amounts in the future for different dates, let's say this contract we set this up for one project, and we know that we're going to have other projects set up like this, so it was worth setting up a group. And for the first year, we can charge 50%, but maybe after the first year of this contract, we can only charge 20% on that. We can add dates to this here. So we can say, like, on 5/4/2026, we are going to have different amounts in there. So if I do that, that changes the initial entry, and it puts an end date in there of 5/3, because I put a new entry in there for the new time period of 5/4. So here, if anybody puts in an expense sheet or a purchase journal using the $1 million bridge project that we're tagging to this test for training, in between these two dates, it's going to pull from here. Now, if I want it to only be marked up 20% from 5/4/2026 going forward, let me change this back to markup. Then I would change this to 1.2 for both of these. And then if anybody puts in a transaction on 5/4/2026, anytime after that, it's only going to mark up those expenses 20% going forward on the bills to the client. So we've talked about the expense groups we can set up as many expense groups as needed for your different types of contracts. We've talked about you can add, you can have just a limited amount of expense codes in your group, or you can have all of them in there. We've talked about changing the markup here. You can change the unit rate. You can also change the GL account if for some reason, or when you use this expense group, you want this meal stuff to go to a different GL account. You can change these as well. I don't think we see that being done very often, but it can be. So those things can all be changed at the expense group level. We recommend that you set up new expense groups if you expect to have more than one project with the same scenario in here. If you're going to have more than one project that has the meals and with these different dates of the 50% markup and then the 20%, then you would use this in here. If you have a specific project where just this one time you have a client that negotiated that you almost always mark up your expenses, but there's one client that said absolutely not, for this project you can't bill us any expenses, and you don't expect that to happen on any other project, there is an override here at the project level. So if I go into projects and I right click on the project name or number or code, and I go to expense markup codes, you can override at the project level what the expense group is showing. So we know the lodging, we had either 0.2 or 0.5. If somebody puts in lodging or printing or meals or mileage, we want it to put a 0% markup in there. We don't want it to look at the expense group. We want it to look from here first. So let's talk about it this way. So when you put in an expense sheet transaction or a purchase journal transaction or disbursement journal, the system will it'll look at the project that you put in, and then it'll go to the project and see if you have anything checked in here to override. Most of the time you probably don't. Some firms we work with, they've negotiated something different on every project, so they might be overriding on every project, but most firms you have some general things that you negotiate on the expense side. So you're only doing this once in a while. So the system will look here. If there's something here, it's going to pull from here and go no further. If there's nothing checked in here, then it does go to the it does look for what expense group you're using. And then it pulls the billing extension from there. So that expense codes and groups, there's a lot to them and it is very complicated. There's some firms that we work with that they only have one expense group. Every contract that you negotiate has a markup of 10% for all of your expenses. So there's only a need for one group. Then we work with some firms that have 50 different expense groups, and then there are variations all the way in between. So it's whatever works for you, and however you negotiate your contracts will determine how many groups that you have here and how complicated your different types of markups and different types of codes are. So that's an overview of expense codes and groups. I'm sure you all have a lot of questions. And I do see there might be some here in chat already, but please let's open it up and feel free to start asking. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything yet in chat, but let me know, Tim, if you see something different.
Yep. Martha, this is Kim Byford with Mesa Associates.
Hi.
And we had our first conference last week. Christy and I went, but this is my area right here. This is where I spend half my job. You were talking about the start dates and end dates on there.
Yeah.
Not a question, but I do use those for setting the new IRS rate. You know, if it's, October 1st or whenever it begins, it's good to have those beginning and end dates. Because that way, if the travel date was prior or after, it does need that.
Great thing to know.
And I guess I do that on the groups, actually.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, not all of ours use the IRS rate because we've got some TVA stuff. And you were showing the project, how you can override.
Yeah.
Those. I've had a couple of cases where somebody had set a different mileage rate here, and then they saved it as their template.
Ooh. Yeah.
And so sometimes I get, hey, why is it not charging correctly?
Yeah.
And that one was a hard one to find.
This is kind of buried in there, isn't it?
It was really buried. Yes.
Yeah. Good lesson for everybody to learn. If your markup's not working like you think that it should, then make sure to come in here to this override. That was a good point. Another thing to point out too, that made me think of this, and I should have had it in here, but if you do change like an expense group, or you change a markup for the same time period, like you change this for this period after there have already been charges in the system, or on the project, you swap out these expense groups, you do have to run this project administration recalculate markups utility so that it goes back and it picks up the new settings that you did.
Oh, okay.
So everyone just, I know it's not exactly related to what you were saying, but that was
that makes sense. I just always kind of thought that was for labor and didn't really realize, but that's interesting to know.
Good. Yeah, this one's for expenses, and the human resources recalculate rates is for labor.
Okay. We do use the unit billing.
Okay.
And one thing that kind of caught us off guard this past year, or we're still learning, is that I did not have the overhead groups set to never bill, and it was trying to calculate in the background some revenue or something. So that was a lesson learned, but we do use projects for our indirect items. So anyway, it just
that we learned to use the employee the disbursement journal instead of the purchase journal.
Okay.
For the unit billing.
Actually, it's backwards, Denise.
Backwards. Okay, I knew it was
we use the purchase journal. Yeah, if you use it, if you set it up as an employee reimbursable,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, that person's name shows on the invoice. Whereas if you use the purchase journal, it doesn't, and you can put your comment is what drops.
And that's actually how your invoice designs are set up. We can swap out some things in there, just no, but I'm sure that's how yours are set up, so that's what's working for you. For everybody in general to know, when you're using unit billing, you can set them up so they flow through the purchase journal or the employee reimbursable journal, and different things can show up on the invoice based on the method that you're using. So great thing to know. Yep.
Right, and part of that too, Kim, I thought was the dates.
Okay, yes, and I talked to a couple of the developers during one of the brain dates, and yes, the one thing that gets me on the unit billing is that it will post to the last day of the month of when you enter it, not the date, not the transaction date that you put in. So you might put in 3/31, but if you didn't enter it until 4/8, it's going to post at 4/30. So that's, yeah, we talked to Unanet about that last week, and I'm hoping maybe they'll look into that so that it'll be more up to date on that, because it also picks like 4th April for the GL period as well.
You're right. I think there might be a suggestion out there on the suggestion portal too.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
And that's why a lot of firms will choose to use the employee reimbursable journal to have it flow through and modify their invoice formats, because it'll still post to the invoice date at the end of the month. So that's an issue, but you can show the individual transaction dates. It flows through the ER journal. So good. Yeah, all good things to know.
Yeah.
Awesome. Martha, we have a couple questions in the chat. The first one is, what is the best way to do mileage where a different rate is reimbursed to the employee versus charged to the client when there is a markup as well?
Yep, that's a great question. So this example right here, this right here is where that could happen. So the 70 cents here, you would set up mileage to reimburse the employee. This would be reimbursing the employee 70 cents. But then if you put the 1.5 here, it will mark up that expense another 50%. So the client would be getting billed $1.40 for every mile. Elizabeth, does that answer your question, or let me know if it doesn't, if you need something else?
And we used flat amount.
It sort of does. It's kind of weird because like we have some projects where we're billing the client 55 cents each and plus 10%.
Okay.
And then ones where we're reimbursing the client and it's 60 cents each and the employee 60 cents each, and then the 10% or 5%.
Three things. Wait, so say that again. So you're reimbursing the employee 60 something cents, but
60 cents, and some of our older clients, it's 55 cents per kilometer. So there's a difference. And then we also add on the 10% markup after that.
Okay. So what I do with that, I do some math, and I would take 55 cents and try to figure out what the 10% is, so that you could build in the, oh yeah, you'd have to back into a markup for it. That whatever the 55 cents plus the 10% is, you'd figure that out and put it in here, which it wouldn't be a 1, it's probably a 0.65 or something. The markup can be less than 1, right?
Okay.
That's not the exact amount, but you do the math and that would go in here. This would be what you're, whatever the amount, this should always be what you're reimbursing your employee.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That is complicated though. So thank you.
That's my life.
Good question. Thank you.
Yeah.
We have another one there. Does using a zero markup versus never bill have a different connotation in the system if we're using post-earned revenue utility?
Oh, I don't know that. We would probably have to test that to give you that answer. I don't know that answer off the top of my head. Team, if any of you know, feel free to speak up, but I have a feeling we probably have to test that and get back to you. Great question, though.
Any other questions from anybody? You can either put them in the
So
chat.
sorry, but I was thinking on that.
Oh, okay.
So using a zero multiplier does have a different connotation than never bill because of the effect on cost. I'm not sure how it affects the post-earned revenue,
Right.
but if you're using a zero markup, you would have, it would be kind of like unit billing. You would have a billing rate with no cost. If you use never bill, you still have the cost. It's just not billable to the client.
Mhm. And I think the post-earned revenue, it depends on how you have it set up, but if it's pulling off of effort, then those are big differences, right? The never bill, but you still have a markup in there, but never bill, it probably, well, actually, I don't know. I guess I still don't know after talking that through. I agree with you, Mary, though, that with what the cost is, just how does post-earned revenue work with them both? It seems like the effort is zero with both of them, so it seems like it would not be in post-earned revenue either way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for stumping us.
Hi, Martha. This is Amy.
Hi, Amy.
I have a couple of questions, actually.
Sure.
The first one you went through and you had the direct bill revenue account entered, but you said it's not necessary. What's the benefit of that?
That is if when you're in, let me show you, I think it's always worth seeing. When you post something in automated invoicing, these are the accounts that are everything's going to go to unless something's set in that expense group. So for ODC, if you have an ODC charge, which is probably what travel and mileage, the things we were talking about would go through, it's going to post to this account that's here, this 4,200. But if for some reason you specifically want mileage to go to a different GL account, like a different revenue account, that's when you would change this. You don't need these 4,200s here like it is. These can be blank. It's going to pull from what's here in these posting accounts.
Okay.
Unless, but because that was the same as this 4,200. But if that account needs to be different for some reason, you want mileage to go to one revenue account, airfare to go to another, meals to go to another, you would change those revenue accounts.
Okay. And then my second question is, I know there's an employee inquiry that you can see what expense codes are being used that are active. Is there one that shows inactive expense codes?
I don't know of anyone. Team, do you know of any list of can we do it?
You can do it if you create the inquiries.
Okay.
So if you go to your project administration and then go to queries and create the query, you can do it then.
Yeah, no, I was wondering, you could
Could do,
always.
yeah, do the active inactive there.
Mm-hmm.
And
But would it tell you if it was used?
I think it'll if you try to delete one of these that has been used, like if I go here and hit delete on my keyboard, I think this is a place where it would tell you once you do that and click save, it's going to give me an error message here. But I know you're wanting to see a list of that before you get
Yeah.
to this point, probably. Yep.
could
Good
you run a
news.
query on your GL to see if it's ever been if there's ever been anything posted to that?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. Other than building a query in your query builder in your GL or in your expense group here, that's the only way I could think to get to it.
Which query builder were you thinking, Denise? Would
I was
do-
thinking either in your general accounting queries.
Like the general ledger?
Yeah, we have one that I have drilled down, which is a dashboard.
Oh, but you're building it. Yeah, I'd have to
Yeah.
get one of our other those. Yep. you'd be using in here Query
Yeah.
Builder, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So nothing right out of the box. You'd have to build something, whether it's Query
Okay.
Builder or have a report.
I'll play around with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other
Anybody else have
questions?
questions? Expense codes, expense groups, or anything else? Feel free to ask.
This is being recorded too, which as usual, we'll send out the recording, but if you have questions after that pop up, you can feel free to email as well, and we can answer even after the fact. So no pressure.
Hey guys, I've got a couple of questions about, but we're trying to implement the resource scheduling we talked about, I think a few weeks ago or a month or so ago.
Okay.
If you don't mind taking a few questions about that.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So we just set up one project, and is there a place that users, so we assign staff to a project, is there a way that can automatically show up? Like, where can they see their projected or scheduled hours?
So they can definitely see it on their timesheet. When they go there, they can say add scheduled projects
Yeah,
and they would be there, but it's not giving their actual schedule. That's just going to show a list of projects.
okay, yeah, we found that. But
Okay.
yeah, is there a way for them to see how many hours they have scheduled for the pay period? Oh,
Not for the pay. So this is for the whole project, but there is scheduled hours in here. Oh, it is though. You can do start and end and then yeah, they'd see how many they had scheduled for between the dates that you put in here.
okay. How did you get this pop up? What'd you do? Just click on the project path in there.
So add scheduled projects and
Okay,
oh,
so
it
so
was
we
here.
did. Oh, okay, so we did add them so that they showed up on their time, like the project number showed up on the screen behind the one you have open,
Okay.
but it didn't show that. Okay, I didn't notice those two columns on the right there when I added them. We'll look at that. Okay.
And you notice when I first pulled it up, it was this small, so you would
Oh,
I
okay.
had to make it bigger. Yes. I mean, there was a little
Gotcha.
scroll bar on the bottom, but that's tricky. Not everybody looks for that. I understand.
Okay.
You can
Uh,
see it in the resource scheduler, and
Mhm.
there is a suggestion on the suggestion portal that it includes when you click add scheduled projects and add to timesheet, that it includes the scheduled hours. There's something out there on the suggestion portal for that as well.
Isn't there also, I'm going by memory here, so correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't in the marketplace, there's like a my scheduled hours report?
Yeah, I put a screenshot in the chat. Do you want me to
Thanks.
put the links too?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh,
if you
yeah,
don't
that'd be
mind.
great. Thank you, Courtney.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And Mesa has a custom action that does that for us, that actually adds the hours when they use the action, but there is a suggestion to do that.
Okay. Yeah, so that was the other thing, like can it auto, like that step you did where they went in there and add my scheduled projects, like is there a way to automate that so that that just happens without them having to manually add them every period?
Not out of the box, but if you're ever interested, I'm sure we could create some kind of customization to do that.
Okay. And then, so with the resource scheduler, we don't really want all the staff to see everybody's
Mhm.
schedule, but could they open up resource scheduler to just see their scheduled?
Not at this time, but those options that Courtney showed, I think would just show their schedules, and those are free off of the marketplace. So I think like that My Schedule Weekly dashboard
Okay.
or My Schedule Monthly would be a option.
Okay. And then I think I had one more. So on the Gantt chart, so like for the project, and we've
Mhm.
set up our schedules in project. How do we, I think y'all said how to do it. So we've put in our phases. How can we add like a milestone or a meeting date, something like that, that's not necessarily gonna have hours associated with it?
At this time, so there's activities that can be added in the web version, but they don't show, nothing shows up on the Gantt chart unless it's part of the work breakdown structure at this point. I
Mhm.
did add just a couple of weeks ago to the suggestion portal, to the suggestion to add the ability for activities to show on the Gantt. So let me see if we can find that before we end here, so you can all vote on it. But you can add activities to show kind of as part of the work breakdown structure in the web version. Let me see if I can get this.
Yeah, that's where we were using was the web version, but
Okay. And now let me see if I can remember where I was doing this, where we do this. Denise knows how to do all of this stuff. So
Yes, if you go to, if you open it up and go, go to the activities, then click on the WBS that you want to, like if it was schematic drawings.
there's one here.
And
So
then
make
you
sure you're
can,
in this WBS view, right?
okay.
and then you can go to your activities and add it, and then you can, you want to decide what kind of types you want, and then add those, is it a to-do, is it a meeting, is it, and those are on your utilities, and you set those up under a drop-down list. And then they have a low, medium, high, if it's on track, if it's, going to be late or not on track, there's different drop-down. And they also can load that to their timesheet from the web version.
Load that to the activity.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that might be something to look at too in the future. We may not have time to go through and.
Yeah. And then if your company allows it, you can sync it to your Outlook so they get flagged on their Outlook that they have a task to do. And that's under your activities on your left, where you have your dashboards, your personal and activities. Then they can manage it from there.
Okay. Yeah, I did see that option. We haven't tried to use it yet, but that could be interesting.
Yeah. I love that option. I'm not allowed to use it. I just know about it.
I just
Well,
put in the chat the suggestion out there. If anybody thinks this is a good idea to have these on the Gantt chart, please go in and vote on that suggestion. I just added in there.
Thank you, Martha. I'll grab a copy of it too and put it out there in our world to ask for votes.
Awesome, thank you. Does that get your questions answered, Steve? Do you have more?
Well, the only other odd thing that popped up, so we put in one schedule, and on the resource scheduler for the, when we find that project, it was showing as like pink or red, like it was over allocated, but none of the staff were over allocated. Do you know why it would be? And this was in the web version, if that matters.
On the Gantt chart, you were seeing it pink or red?
No, in resource scheduler, like if you go to projects, so like on this screen, everybody was, blue or green. But when we went to projects and looked at that project, it was showing as red, like it was over allocated.
We might need to look at your specific instance. If you want to reach out and we can help you take a look at that, Steve.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we might might need to look at the project and look at and kind of drill into your specific instance to figure that out.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm probably gonna set up something because we have some customizations we're trying to plan. So I'll probably be in touch here in the next week or so.
Awesome. Sounds great. I think it's 1 o'clock. Tim, you want to wrap us up?
Thank you so much. Great discussion today. Thanks for the questions. And Martha, great job on that presentation. Just by way of announcement, if you can see, hopefully you can see the slide. So next 2 weeks from now, May 26th is Memorial Day. So we won't have a session on that day. So our next one will be June 9th, and we'll be digging into credit card reconciliation. So if you're interested in that, please join us. We'll be digging deep into that as well, like we did today. And we look forward to that presentation. And as we discussed and mentioned a few times, if we can help further one-on-one, please reach out. We're more than willing to set up a time to dig into your instance and help you figure out what's going on. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we look forward to seeing everybody on June 9th. Have a great Memorial Day.
you.